Take 3 here on Crazed Performance Repair. Camera troubles. Anyway, we are here to do a VLOM modification on this particular unit. This is I guess you'd call it a Gen 5. This is for the LT-based engine. I have a Suburban, 2016 Suburban up above me. We're going to show you guys the VLOM modification, talk a little bit about the VLOM itself. For those of you who do not know, the VLOM modification is something that I designed or came up with for a lifter release trick that I came up with to solve the problem of preventing it from happening again, your lifter collapse situation. And I have yet to have a collapse lifter situation where a customer brings me a collapse lifter on this generation of engine. I don't know why I haven't seen it yet. I see everything else. I don't see that. Not sure why. But I know people are having a lot of trouble out there with them. So we're going to do this one together here as far as doing the VLOM mod, even though I'm doing a full delete on this vehicle instead of a lifter release trick. I'm just going to do this for the sake of video content to show you guys because I have lots of requests for it, and I need to honestly do it myself. I'm glad I did bring this up because I found out a couple things with this particular vehicle. Now, for those of you who do know, I have to cut the gaskets for my VLOM mod. You can see the gaskets are already cut on this VLOM unit. So VLOM stands for Valley Lifter Oil Manifold, and this one was already modified before I got to it. Little backstory on this truck: I had a lifter failure, and they replaced the lifter under warranty. Then it had a lifter failure again because they didn't solve the underlying problem, which always comes down to oil pressure. It's a little different on these ones, but it is still oil pressure related. I'll explain that too. And then they brought it back again. They replaced it again, and then the third time they said, "Okay, we're going to look this up." They found me on YouTube. And apparently they did a VLOM mod of their own. They used a different VLOM plug than mine. I did not know this until I took it out. And yeah, it's a little funky. It's got some glue on it, and it did not fit properly. And I know why. And this is one of the things that has been complained about on my website to me, is that the VLOM plug didn't fit their newer style VLOM. And it seems like it's 1 out of every 100 people, maybe 2 out of every 100 people. Basically, the hole here is drilled differently on some of them. So lucky for me, this is one of them that is causing the issue. So I have found a solution using my existing VLOM plug, and I want some information in the comments below. If you have done this already on one of these units, please let me know what you have found. Did the VLOM plug go in easy? Did you have trouble getting it in? Because I may revise the design of this thing to work with both style of units. I will show you what I have to do to make it work with this one in just a moment here. So, first things first, what causes the lifter failures in these units? The previous generation was lack of oil pressure during activation. It requires a minimum of 27 psi. If you go to 26 or below, it's going to bind the little locks that are inside the lifter. The lifter has the locking mechanisms. When those bind, it knurls out the steel on the internal portion of the lifter, causing the lifter to get stuck when it activates. So, those ones were lack of oil pressure. These ones are a little different story, and I'm going to test it on this one here in just a minute before I do the VLOM plug. But these ones up here, these have a variable or on-demand or whatever you want to call it, variable vane pump for the oil pump. So when the system's going to activate, it triggers a solenoid, increases oil pressure / volume. It's actually increasing the volume, which generally increases the oil pressure because you're getting more volume to the same system using the same amount of oil, and then it activates the system. These ones don't seem to have lacking oil pressure during activation, and they don't lack oil pressure when they fail for people. Nobody's contacting me and say, "Hey, I did the VLOM mod, my oil pressure's low." That's kind of a myth. The VLOM plug doesn't make your oil pressure low. You just didn't notice until you started paying attention after you did the VLOM mod. So, this one is actually applying oil pressure when it shouldn't. It tends to be the tendency. Now, I did make a previous video. I suppose I'll throw it up in the corner, but I wouldn't necessarily click on it unless you're just that curious. Basically, that video, I am taking back my statements on that video. I had found out that there is a small pinhole oiling hole right here in the back of this thing for oiling this cam follower that sits on the camshaft and pumps on the high pressure fuel pump system. Now, this on the generations that do not, or the engines that do not have AFM, this does not see the oil from the top of this, so that hole is unnecessary. I was under the assumption that it might be needed. You may or may not want. I was kind of skeptical about it because I thought it should have plenty of oil even without that hole, but we did find out about that little pinhole. Anyway, those newer ones that do not have AFM from the factory, they're deleted, pre-deleted. There was a chip shortage for a while, so they started making them without them. Anyway, those ones do not have any kind of oiling system for those engines, the bigger trucks, whatever. And so it's not necessary to have that oil hole feeding oil like I had assumed. So doing the VLOM mod is perfectly safe, not going to cause any drama with this unit. So feel free to VLOM mod away, I guess. Little disclaimer too, I got to spit it out. I'm probably going to spit it out a couple times. You do need a tune to do the VLOM modification. So you need to have your system turned off in the tune. At bare minimum, a range device, but I do not recommend them. I highly recommend lt1swap.com. You send your computer to him, and for a very low cost, he will send the computer back. I'm not going to say the cost here on video because 2 or 3 years down the road, he might increase his price. I don't know. So check him out, and with that, let's go ahead and get into the VLOM mod. So clearly, we have to cut the gaskets here, and then there is a VLOM plug that I sell. The current one, on my previous video, I had a slot in here, and it was a steel plug. The current one is an aluminum plug. This is a revised plug that I made for the previous generation. Now, I found out this does not work on this particular VLOM, and this is where I've been having the complaints. Some people say it goes in fine, some people say it doesn't. Apparently, GM, this actually looks like a properly drilled unit. There is a couple of steps in this hole, and I'll go ahead and prompt up a picture for you here of those couple of steps, and I'll throw little arrows or something pointed at those darn things. But there's a couple of steps there, and between the two steps, there's a step after the threads and a step before it hits the bottom of the hole there, where it would bottom out. The two steps there is you want it between those two steps because there's an oil port that feeds the sensor, and you want that to get oil pressure. And then there's an oil port that feeds the VLOM unit right here. This goes into the solenoids. That is the one you're trying to plug. So if you have one like this, we have to cut this VLOM plug to allow it to get enough compression to go in there. Now later on, I think I'm going to revise this so it's more universally useful. What I'll have to do is get a bigger diameter unit and then have a cut in it before I ship it out. That way it'll work on the older ones because it'll compress, and it'll work on these because it'll just compress more and get tighter. And then the slot thing is still relevant. On my previous video from the original VLOM plug, it'll just be aluminum instead of steel. And it'll still work on these units because it'll compress down far enough. So here's what I'm going to suggest you do. If you get one of these style and you have this newer version, we got to run over to something like a bandsaw. You can use a regular hacksaw. I probably wouldn't use a sawzall because it'll bounce around on you. But you got to cut a slot in it with a small metal blade of some sort. Now, secondary disclaimer, do as I say and not as I do. I did not wear eye protection. You should wear eye protection when using something like that. And keep your fingers away from the blade unless you're really willing to risk it. So, danger, hazard, whatever, throw all the exclamations all over the screen. Make sure you're safe, unlike me. Now, I have a little triangle file here. I'm going to use this guy right on the edge here where I put that slot. You can see that slot there. I'm just going to run it back and forth a couple of times just to deburr the edge. And then I'm going to go on the inside here. I'm going to do the same thing to that inside burr. So now we got the burrs out of there. We'll get rid of any metal shavings. Hopefully the phone will focus on this. You can see the slot in there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and set this down here. What it's going to do is it's going to stop on the first step. You can see it right there. It stopped right away. This is actually before the first step. Immediately after the threads, it's already stopping. Now, those two steps that are in there, each step makes the hole a little smaller. So, the first step here that I'm going to pass up, we're going to use a socket that appropriately fits that unit. we're going to make sure that this slot is, oh, of course, I aimed it in the wrong direction, just trying to show you the hole size there. There we go. We're going to aim that slot towards the oil pressure sending unit hole that goes through this guy here. So we're going to aim it that direction away from this port here. Then we're going to take this guy, pop it in there, pound that guy in there. Oh, I should stop. I got to show you guys how to test this thing first before I go doing all this crazy hunky-dory stuff. Hang on. Be right back. All right, in order to test this thing, we need this Allen plug in here. By the way, you have to remove that to install the VLOM plug. I got a little ahead of myself, didn't I? We're going to go ahead and throw this guy in here. That'll be good enough for a test. I don't need to tighten them down for the test's sake. If you want to test these things and see if your lifter failed because this unit is the core of the problem, all you need to do is have the oil pressure sending unit in there, the plug in, and the VLOM sitting upside down here. Get yourself an air nozzle, throw it over top of this port, the one that has the oil pressure from the engine go up to, and pressurize this. Now you see, right over on this side, it's spraying oil out. That's supposed to happen. That's supposed to get oil pressure all the time. However, these solenoids, they're leaking. You can see, I'll go ahead and tip it up for you so you can actually see the oil coming out. Oop, come on now. See how there's oil coming out of those holes? That should not be happening. So, this one is actually one that failed, of course, because these solenoid packs are bad. Now, I'm trying to think here. It was cylinder 7 that had the bad lifter in it. That would be this one right here. So, if we check again, I bet you that one is leaking probably more out of the rest, more than the rest of them are. Okay, so I can see these two are not leaking very bad. And these two are leaking much more than these two. And I'm willing to bet you this one leaks slightly more than this one does here. And that's why this one failed first. So, had they put a lifter in, which they did, it was going to fail, and it did. And then they put another lifter in, and it failed again. It's always going to fail on the same cylinder. And then they finally did the lifter release trick, VLOM plug, and AFM range device, which I don't, again, recommend. They did that, and then took care of the issue, and it came to me for a full delete because he knew it was already a problem and he didn't want to deal with it again. So now that I'm not ahead of myself anymore and we did our testing, I can go ahead and install a VLOM plug. You need to remove the oil pressure sensor, remove the port, and then we need to aim that slot away from this guy. Grab our driver, aka socket, and we're going to smack it in a little bit. Now, you'll be able to see this as it drops. You hear that? It came to a thud. That was a stop. Now, it has gotten to the point where it has hit that first shelf that I showed you guys a picture of. We're going to go past that first shelf. Now, I've gone past that first shelf, and I'm driving it down. There. Now it came to another dead stop. That dead stop is that second shelf. And if we look in here, okay, it has gotten to the point where it blocked that hole almost completely, but I think it's still flowing through there just a little bit. So let's test it and see if it's still coming out of these guys here. And if it is it coming out a lot less than it was before? I'll be able to tell because it was blowing a lot. I mean, the oil was moving all over them holes. So we're going to test it one more time here. Wow, it's barely coming out now. It's still coming out though, so it does leak a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and smack it a few more times. I'm going to remove the sensor when I do it because this, at least in the previous generation, the oil pressure sensor was really sensitive to shock. I mean, just cracking it free with a socket would cause the thing to fail. It was bizarre. If you don't want to wreck your socket, you might want to find a junk socket to do this with because this thing is really hitting hard. In fact, that might be bottoming out on one of the shelves there. I'm going to grab a different socket. All right, I got a little smaller socket now, so I know it won't be bottoming out. Rinse and repeat. Aha, there we go. Okay. You can actually hear it. It's not leaking at all. It's the only leak I hear is in here. These things are not leaking whatsoever. So I have that VLOM plug completely sealed up and in position. Now, we'll go ahead and show you guys a view of the inside there. I'm going to try and blow it out. Socket left a little debris or just dirty, made the aluminum look dirty by smashing it. Okay, there we go. So you can see the seam in there. That seam is completely closed up now, and it is a really tight press fit, but it is down in there, and it is past this area where that hole goes in, so it's covering that, but it's also past this one completely to where that hole is wide open. So if I take a peek in here, come on. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. There you go. You see that weird slot in there? That slot is where that oil hole goes for that oil pressure sensor, so that's wide open. So hypothetically, if I do this, it should blow right through there. No problem. So, boy, you guys are sitting kind of kitty-wampus to straighten you out. With that, I was going to sum up this video, but I feel like I'm forgetting something. Let me think just a second here. Again, you definitely need a tune. This thing will throw all kinds of error codes. One more note, though, on this that might be important. If you are doing a full delete, a complete mechanical delete, like this one is doing, this VLOM mod might actually be a good idea. Now, you need to block off the oil towers. You don't want oil pressure leaking out of those towers when you do a full delete, because the lifter design is completely different, and it allows oil flow up those towers, and you should not have that. So you need to block off those oil towers. There is small little metal plugs that you can pound into the oil towers. A lot of companies sell them, whether it's Texas Speed, LS Acceleration, or whatever. Any place you can get an AFM delete, they offer these little plugs. They're much cheaper than replacing the valley cover. So if you go that plug route with those little things for pounding into the oil tower, you might want to do the VLOM plug and block this hole off, because these things clearly leak really bad. This is going to actually increase his oil pressure, most likely, his static idle oil pressure when the system's not active, when it's not trying to increase that high volume pump, simply because this thing was leaking before. So, a little positive note to doing the VLOM mod on these units. Please, again, leave a comment. Did you have to do this kind of thing? Did you have to cut the slot in it? Did you not have to cut the slot in it? If you did not, because I already cut the slot in it, clearly I updated the inventory, and now you got the updated one, and you're watching this video much later than I created it. But that's okay. Let me know how it went. Did you have the weird steps in there? Did you only have one step, 2 steps? How many steps did you have in your VLOM unit? And yeah, I guess with that, like, share, subscribe. I hope to see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of this community, doing all this. If you want to be even more involved in this community project of this lifter release trick and all these problems these GM trucks are having, these things are prone to push rod failures, by the way. So there's a solution to that too, as well, on this website that I'm going to mention, crazedperformancerepair.com. I have upgraded push rods for these units that are a smaller diameter, heavier wall. They take care of the push rod interference problem that they have from the factory, which I should also make a new video on. And these units here, you know, we talk about all this stuff on that website. There is a forum page. You can become a member. If you want to become a premium member, you can go on the premium forum, and I will give you any data you want. So a shout out to my own website. I guess it's sponsored by me, right? A little late in the video to throw a sponsorship in, but it's a really cheap membership, an annual membership. You pay 1 yearly fee, and I think it's at $36 at the time of this video, I believe. Don't quote me on that. And again, I might change it later. Once I get enough members, I'll have to change the pricing a little bit, but right now I made it as absolutely cheap as possible, so we'll call it an introductory rate, right? Basically, it's $36 a year, and I have motor and Chilton and whatever wiring diagram for whatever vehicle you want. You post a post, and I will share you any information you really asked me for, just because you're a premium member. Also, there's a separate set of videos. I do a video pretty much every week. Every once in a while I'll skip, like during Christmas season or something. But it's just an update, general update of what's going on in the shop for the most part. And then, of course, I'll throw in a little tech tip or something on there every once in a while too. And I throw these videos up there as well. So, I will hopefully see you there. If I don't, I'll see you again on YouTube here later on. And with that, we will see you on the next video. Hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully this is something that you guys wanted. I mean, I did get requests, so I'd imagine it's something you wanted. So, here's the new VLOM. Oh, I forgot to show you the old VLOM, the compare. Gen 4 VLOM, Gen 5 VLOM. Now, this would actually be this way. So, the back of the motor is at the top for you guys, and the front of the motor is at the bottom. That's the major difference. I mean, it's clearly a big difference. The solenoid pack looks pretty damn the same, though, but this one has no solenoid pack in it. So, yeah, we'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching.